100th, yes, you heard that right, 100th episode of the A-List podcast. I'm joined with Gary Washburn, but more importantly, I'm joined by Sherrod Blakely, who is currently celebrating his birthday as we record. Happy birthday, Sherrod.
And I am not celebrating as we record. Trust me when I tell you, I am not celebrating right now. I will afterwards.
Happy birthday, Sherrod, and happy birthday, Kwani. Happy birthday, Kwani's mama.
Yes, more importantly, happy birthday to my mother who gave birth to me. Yes, you guys have the same birthday, so.
Wow.
Happy birthday, Miss Lanice.
Wow.
You said the last name properly?
Yeah.
Snaps to that. But yes.
But no Fiondu. Can't do Fiondu, though, apparently.
Sherrod, how are you feeling? Another year older and wiser.
I'm good. I'm just ready for another trip around the sun. I'm ready to talk about changes, Changes, not just for me, but about this green team.
I love you just want to skip over your birthday and talk about the big drama that everyone is focused on right now.
I do.
All right. We'll talk about it, but happy birthday again. As people may know at this point, Ime Udoka reportedly is being taken by the Brooklyn Nets. That's still not official, but as of now, we've read a bunch of reports. Gary has done a little bit of reporting himself. Gary, what do you know at this point?
The Celtics will let Ime go. Like they're not going to put a stop. They're not going to stop her to this. And at this point, they're not going to ask for compensation. They just want the Udoka era to end. Now they don't have to pay him. They're very happy with what Joe Mazzulla has done through 6 games. I know it's only been 6 games in the training camp, but they seem very encouraged by just the new leaf. And I don't think once the Mazzulla kind of, began to get comfortable and make some impact on the organization that there was no chance that Ime was going to be able to come back. So I just think the Celtics want to move on from the 1-year Ime Udoka era, allow Ime to coach in the league again. I didn't think it would happen this fast, but I do believe that it's going to happen in Brooklyn and he's going to be right down the road for the Nets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the Celtics, bringing an end to this chapter, it's clearly what they wanted to do. But I think just looking at it in hindsight, I think they wanted to have the option of potentially pursuing compensation, which when you think about it, it makes sense why you would suspend him for the year versus firing him. You fire him, you get nothing. You have no shot at getting anything. Mm-hmm. Remember when Doc Rivers, wanted to go to LA and they were able to get a first-round pick out of that. That's because that was a coach that wanted to leave and go somewhere, and they did not want him to leave. This completely different situation. They were more than happy that somebody wanted to take Ime Udoka off their hands. And so frankly, Brooklyn, this is yet another one of those, damn, Brooklyn, really? type of things. Because Ime was the guy you could have had all along. Mm-hmm. And the other guy you could have had along was Jacque Vaughn, who's the interim coach, who's probably going to do a better job as an interim coach than Steve Nash did. Steve Nash was a great player, but he was a horrible head coach. And part of why he was such a bad coach was because he didn't have coaching credibility. He didn't do anything in that position that he was in to warrant them to respect him. One of the first preseason games, I will never forget this moment. Brooklyn was like, they were on the short end of a run, and then Kyrie just goes up to the ref and calls a timeout. And Steve Nash looking around like, okay. So he didn't even know that a timeout was called until he stopped.
So is that more memorable when Kyrie and KD went on Instagram Live and said they're not going to need a coach, though? Because that should have been the red flag for the organization at that point.
And if you're Steve Nash, I would have tried to work out a buyout when Kevin Durant said this summer that I should be fired. Like, your best player clearly don't got confidence in you. The organization might do, but you haven't done anything to warrant that confidence other than the fact that they got you on the payroll. So, but Ime, I think. Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, quickly on the Steve Nash note, I found it very interesting that the Nets PR tweeted that they had mutually parted ways. Woj decided to tweet that Nash had gotten fired. I think Shams also said that they had agreed to part ways, but the language on both sides was pretty interesting to me because it was like, did they mutually agree to part ways or did he get fired?
They mutually agreed that you're going to get fired. Exactly. That's what happened. They mutually agreed that you're going to get fired. Those are my words. Don't get fired. GON space GET fired.
But you were going to say something about Coach Udoka.
Well, I just think this is a great opportunity to reset with a team that consists of players that you're familiar with. I think he will have a smoother transition than a lot of coaches that come into a situation. And let's be honest and keep it real. He coming with an edge. And he already had an edge to begin with. Now he's coming with an edge, and he's armed with two of the top 10, top 15 players in the game.
Yeah.
Brooklyn's gonna be a problem for some folks. So not this week, maybe not next week, but by the end of the year, they're gonna be a problem for some folks.
Okay, so you both mentioned how there's no compensation for Coach Udoka from the Celtics end, but I think another big factor is the fact that they are divisional rivals. They obviously swept them in the first round of the playoffs last year. So I think you both think the rivalry is stronger as a result now that there are these added fuels to the fire?
Gary, what do you think, Gary?
Or is Brooklyn even relevant yet?
No, I think it's a major rivalry. I mean, it'll be interesting the first game that Udoka comes back to Boston and the reception he'll get.
Yo, those signs are going to be crazy.
I'm not sure if Udoka has the credibility to just walk in like nothing happened in Boston. Like, I think he's going to have to like my man Ricky Ricardo, the great.
Yeah, he's just been a Ricky Ricardo.
Ricky Ricardo once said, "Lucy, you got a lot of explaining to do." Like, Ime has a lot of explaining to do. What happened? And obviously he's going to New York. Like, he is not going to Charlotte or Minnesota. He's going to a market that is going to press him about what the hell happened in Boston. And he's going to have a lot of, pro-women's groups in terms of the Me Too movement and pro, rights for women, obviously, understandably. Like, what's going on? What are you guys doing in Brooklyn? Like, it's not going to be a big, happy family once he gets to Brooklyn. I mean, if, this goes down, like, to me, he's got a lot of explaining to do. And it's going to be a lot of off the court situations. And it's only been a month and a half. So he can't have resurrected himself like that quickly. Right. Like, I thought if he were going to do the image thing, disappear for about 8-9 months, then reappear, look a little shave, do something that makes you look dramatically different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, grow dreads or something? What? Well, I mean, come on.
Anyway, change your look. Just be a different person. It's hard for me to believe that after 5 weeks, he's done a 180 and he's gonna no. So you're basically hiring almost the same guy that the Celtics don't want to coach. Yeah. And it's totally off the court. On the court, it could very much work. I think he could have an effect. But for him to walk in there like he LeVar Ball going on, you just rock with this
all the brand.
Yeah, all the swag doesn't really. I don't see that's happening because the players know what went down. Hey, man, in the media and the organization. And what about the women in that organization? What are they going to think?
What sign does that send?
The women that work for the Nets. How does that impact them? Right. So there's a lot that is going to go down. And Ime, that first press conference in Brooklyn, and, he's going to explain himself. And is he going to say 5 weeks later, oh, I'm a completely changed man?
No.
Like, he's going to have to admit mistakes. He's going to have to admit that unless he does the denial game, I didn't do nothing.
The Shaggy wasn't me.
I was wronged. This is not, my story is not, I've never told my story, but it's not what's been reported. Like, he can do that angle, but he's going to have to be very apologetic and just keep his head down and coach. And he's going to have to meet with the media every day. So this is more than just hoop. This is the Me Too movement. This is women's rights. This is how comfortable or uncomfortable he makes women in this organization now feel. So there's a lot that is going to go on with this hire. And the Nets are taking a real chance because this guy, and I said, like, he was a total professional with me. I can't say I personally saw anything. I didn't. But obviously, this is someone who made some real bad mistakes over his time in Boston. And to say that he's suddenly a changed man in 5 weeks, no. This is, I don't see that. I don't see that. So how does this work?
You know how it works?
Yeah.
When? Point blank. This hire has absolutely nothing to do with anything other than winning basketball games, which to me is a recipe for disaster when you put all your eggs in that one particular basket. Because Ime, regardless of what he says in that press conference, to Gary's point, you've got to show consistency over time. You've got to show growth and change over time. You can't just show up there and say, yep, I'm a different man 5 weeks later. Yeah, you went from being the hottest thing in the coaching game to unemployed or to be suspended for the year. And now you're back in the game with a team that's 2-5. So things have changed, but I'm not sure, to Gary's point, I'm not sure Ime has changed. And I'm not convinced that he's going to be all that apologetic at that opening presser. I would not be shocked if the confidence that he exuded in Boston, when he really didn't have no receipts for that confidence, is going to be still applicable in Brooklyn. Ime, as we all know, is extremely comfortable and confident in his ability to coach. And I think that's going to be the message that he's going to try to push out as often as he can, that I'm here to coach. I'm here to coach. Just like, players, I'm just here not to get fined. Ime's just there to coach. That's going to be his mantra. And the players are going to absolutely fall in line with that. They're going to say, look, I don't know what happened in Boston, but all I know is he's a heck of a coach, and we're glad he's here. And Ime is going to sing that same tune. Look, Boston is in the past. I'm going to leave that in the past. I'm here to be the Brooklyn Nets head coach. That's what my focus is on. And as much as we're going to try, as the members of the media, to try to get him to open up about that, I don't think he will. And there will be at some point, I got to believe that there's certain things that Ime has agreed to not talk about. And those are a lot of the questions, as you can imagine, we want answers to. I mean, think back to that Brad Stevens and Wick Grossbeck press conference. And I thought Wick's, the statement that he made about, I'm not used to having a piece of paper to kind of, limit myself because I like being open and free talking. And Ime isn't like that. So for Ime, saying very little, that's going to come naturally to him. And being more guarded, that's going to come natural to him because, in his time in Boston, we never really got to know him. We never really got to be around him the way we were like Brad Stevens or Doc Rivers and some of the other coaches that have come through here. Part of that had to do with the pandemic and just the constraints that we had as far as access. But a bigger part of it was just their demeanor. I mean, even though, he was the head coach and we had all these limitations, there were still other assistant coaches that I spent time with that I got to know really well. Will Hardy, who's in Sacramento, him and I had a number of conversations and certainly more than I had with Ime. And I just think that Ime right now, he is in the best landing spot that he could possibly be in, considering all the stuff that he has been involved with at the near the end of his time in Boston.
And if you add to that, well, for one, the bar is kind of the floor when you think about Brooklyn, even though they have these superstars and we've already heard now 2 seasons that they're supposed to be the next best thing when you talk about basketball. He doesn't have that much work to do in the sense of like the expectation for the Brooklyn Nets has still not exceeded what we expected. So I think in that, from a coaching standpoint, he's kind of good on that sense. If it's a failure, it's just, you blame Kyrie. If it's not, he's just the genius of a coach that he's proven to be, quotes, so far here in Boston. But I think another thing, Gary, you mentioned only being 5 weeks out. Wouldn't you say the shelf life of a coach is a little short in that sense? Like, if a year had gone by, would Ime even have a shot at being a head coach in the league?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought next season was a little pushing it, but maybe the year after. But I thought he would just need some time to this not to be a story, for this to cool down, for this to become yesterday's news. And him to rehabilitate his image, do some interviews, tell people that he's changed, and then walk into that interview with whatever team with confidence and say, hey, I made a mistake. Now, I mean, to me, yeah, he's jumping on the coals while they're hot. I'm sure he's going to be compensated nicely in Brooklyn. It's a big-time job. It's an organization that wants to win. He's not coaching, Oklahoma City or something. So he is coaching a big-time team in terms of wanting to compete. He's got ties there. He was a former assistant coach. But to me, I just don't think it's even it can be explained how you suddenly, how have you changed as a man in a month? Or did you think you needed to change? I mean, that's some of the hard questions that's
a better question. Do you
think you need to change? Or was it a mistake? Was it just an error in judgment? Like, how are you going to frame, what you did, and people are going to ask, and it's going to be TMZ and all these people in the entertainment blogs and page 6 and all that, because this is more than basketball. So I think that he's jumping on the Colts when they're hot. I'm sure that there were conversations with his representative saying, well, if we were interested in you, are you ready to come back and coach now? I'm sure he was like, yeah, I am.
You've been born at home.
And let's get this moving. So to me, I'm not so sure this is a good move for Ime Udoka for his long term, because I just said before, his image right now isn't very good unless he just says, hey, this is what happened. This is all that happened, but the Celtics seem like they know more of what's going down.
Well, Gary, the one thing that we haven't talked about, but it's the reality of what went down, and that is timing is everything. What Ime did, if that happened 5, 6, 8, 10 years earlier, he'd still be coaching the Celtics.
Absolutely.
There's absolutely no doubt about that. And the one thing that folks who are in executive positions in the NBA know is that what Ime did happens a lot. It has happened with damn near every organization in the NBA, if not all of them. And it has not led to firing. It has not led to punishment. But because of the time in which this happened, because of the era that we're living in, where these type of indiscretions become much more magnified and have the potential to have much more long-term systemic factors and issues and frankly fallouts, it's a much bigger deal now. And the Celtics did the appropriate thing and dealt with it the way you're supposed to. But there's still that old vanguard of folks in the league who are looking at this like, yeah, that happened in Boston, but that happens all the time. Are we going to allow that to sway our perspective, the way we perceive him as a head coach, a leader of our organization? And to me, it's a quasi-enabling dynamic that folks like Ime are going to experience. I don't think that the conversations about what happened in Boston are going to be very long with the folks in Brooklyn. I think that they, based on what they know, they'll ask him, is there anything else that we need to know that we don't know about right now? And Ime may have something to say. He may not have something to say. But the bottom line is he's walking into a situation that could not be any more perfectly built for him to succeed. You've got talent already there. You've got ownership who has already embraced your flaws. I mean, usually you got to spend some time with folks to figure out.
They already know.
They already know. They already know where the rails need to be put in order to keep Ime in check. They know that, and they're going to do that. And to your point, Gary, as far as the female employees, I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out. Because the Brooklyn Nets, they've been like a lot of NBA teams in terms of becoming more diverse with their staffing, whether it's their sideline reporters, whether it's folks within their front office. And there's certainly, they have addressed that. And it'll be very interesting to see how they handle that. And you better believe that the women in those positions, they're going to be reaching out to the women in the Celtics organization and get all the intel they possibly can about Ime to see are there any things that they need to know that they don't know about already. So Ime, people wonder, did the Nets vet him well enough? I'm not worried about that vetting. I'm worried about the vetting that those, and not even worried. I'm more interested in the vetting process of those that are going to be working with him are going through, because they're the ones that really need to know. They're the ones that are going to be dealing with on a regular basis. They need to know what the hell they're dealing with, because, ownership, you might see Ime before the game and you might see him after the game, and you may see him every now and then. But if you're working in that building, if you're working in an organization, you're going to see him with much more regularity. You need to know what the hell you're dealing with. And you better believe that folks are asking questions.
One final note, before we leave this subject, take it with a grain of salt, but I just found it very interesting that of all the teams in the league, he is back in the hometown of the great Neil Long.
I was waiting for you to put that. I was waiting for that, Kwani.
Yeah, I just, I don't know what that says, but it's just a very interesting thing to
Reunited. We'll see if it feels good. I can't go peaches and herb on them just yet.
We don't know. But moving on.
Hold on, but
yeah.
Nia's from Los Angeles.
Well, she claims Brooklyn heavy.
She claims Brooklyn.
Okay.
Oh, Gary, why would she claim Los Angeles, Gary?
Because Gary wants to claim Bel-Air.
Because we went to the same high school. Anyway.
Thank you.
You're not claiming y'all, though. Wait, okay. What a flex, though. Did you know her?
No, did not know her in high school. No.
Okay.
I was waiting for him to tell y'all that.
Why did you tell us this last time?
It didn't come up. Yeah, we went to the same high school.
So now he gone. So now Gary's spilling all the tea.
Wait, I got to send all my kids to that high school then. And clearly great talent comes from that school.
But Gary went to that high school too, so what you talking about?
You heard him trying to give a compliment.
Amir Johnson went to that same high school.
Neil Long and Regina King.
I know.
Sure.
Yeah,
Brenda from 227. Brenda.
Wow.
And Tim Story, who directed the first Barbershop. He's directed
Black
other movies,
excellence, including Amir Johnson.
Don't forget Amir Johnson.
Right.
There's a little bit, Amir Johnson.
He didn't want to say his
Trevor Reason.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. I didn't know Trevor went there too. He went to Westchester.
He went to Westchester.
Damn, Gary.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. And for personally, if his son and still lives in Brooklyn, he gets a big chance to be closer to his son. So I'm just going to be fascinated to what he says to the New York media in that first press conference, and when women's groups and when pro women's groups in terms of just the women's rights. And I said, are out there picketing Nets games and show, what are the organization going to say to that? Because they have every right to have an issue with this.
I just don't want him to go, oh, Shaggy, it wasn't me on him. Yeah. I don't want him to do that.
What are the women in this Nets organization? What do they think about this? I'm fascinated to see that too.
Mm-hmm.
While we're in Brooklyn, I wanted to leave New York, but I feel as though we should stay in Brooklyn for just a little bit longer because we have to talk about Kyrie Irving because he is also the biggest. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, but it's in the rundown, so we have to talk about it. Kyrie has been I don't even know the term. He posted a link to a film that has been deemed anti-Semitic on his Twitter account and had a little back and forth with an ESPN reporter. I'm sure if you're online at this point, you've probably seen it. But what do you two think, if there will be at all, is the penalty? The Brooklyn Nets have already pushed back on saying that they do not condone anti-Semitism. And as you both know, we've also seen a rise in it as a result of Kanye West's comments earlier last month. And of course, people have felt, I think, empowered now that Twitter is owned by Elon Musk. And it just literally, it could word vomit everything that's going on, but I'm sure everyone listening already knows. But specifically with Kyrie, do you two think there will be any kind of penalty for, one, the things that he's posted on his platform, but two, just the way he's been standing behind what he said at this point?
Go, Gary. You got it.
No, I think if something was going to happen, it would have happened by now. Yeah. I think the league is just trying to hope this move on from this, release a bunch of statements that are nameless and don't point out Kyrie's in particular, and keep it moving. And I gotta say this, like, the movie that Kyrie pointed, Hebrews and Negroes,
Mm-hmm.
it's a movie, and I haven't seen it. Okay, we're just reading about it. It's kind of like a philosophy on who is the original man on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and it says that black Africans were black people. Okay, if that is
the Black Hebrew Israelites movement, essentially.
Yes, the Black Israelites movement, and growing up in Los Angeles and seeing people with all types of political, I've seen folks before the Asiatic Black folks and the people that think that we're Jews, all that. I've seen that before. You go to your local park and the brothers is telling you what they think and asking you things like that. Yes, asking you to, saying, they have their particular religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure if Kyrie, the movie is over 3 hours. Okay. So, and I'm not saying he's not smart enough to watch it or whatever. Did he watch the movie? Did he read the book? Because it's based off a book from 2015. Yeah. Okay. That's the question I have. And if you haven't, and it sounds like something that you would support, because I think at this point, it's safe to say like Kyrie has embraced Black nationalism. He has, embraced the Muslim faith. He is changing, that's his choice if that's what he wants to do. Okay. I've had family members, friends, embrace Islam or more Black nationalism and more where we come from, things like that. But you have to be able to explain that. And if you haven't seen the movie and, then don't plug it as much, because you do have 4.5 million followers. You do have a platform where people are going to say, oh, well, if Kyrie said, watch it, let me check this out. If he had just said, listen, I just want people to watch this type of movie. Like, I just want people to learn. If they agree with it or don't agree with it, I just want them to get a different point of view. I would have respected that. I just want people to get a different point of view. Now, the anti-Semitic language, I've heard it has, that's terrible. I can't speak for that. That's unacceptable. But if it's a movie where you feel like, listen, this is not violent or this isn't, offensive, but this is a different point of view, one that I'm learning about, and I just plugged it or promoted it because I want people to tell me what they think of it. That would have been a better solution. That would have been something that's okay, hey, I don't support this, but I just want people to say, watch this and tell me what they think. We all have seen movies about theories. I mean, there's 10 movies about the assassination of JFK and how it was the CIA, there was the CIA, it was the FBI, it was the Russians, it was the Cubans. There's 10 theories on who killed JFK. There's other theories on who killed MLK, Martin Luther King. King's family came out years later and said they don't think it was James Earl Ray. So there are different theories. I went to the Civil Rights Museum, and there are, if you guys have been in Memphis, the Civil Rights Museum has details and looks into all the theories of King's assassination. That it wasn't James Earl Ray, that it was the CIA, things like that, that the conspiracy, so if that's what you're trying to do, if you're Kyrie, I want people to look at this and tell me what they think or give me, then that's one thing. But to post it, and you probably don't know all of what's in it, and then be defensive about it, it's just going to turn the people that were trying to have your back, it's going to turn them off too, because you're being defensive about it. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of a conversation that happened in Milwaukee right after the All-Star game, when Kyrie had that infamous conversation with Kevin Durant in Charlotte. And Steve Bullpitt from the Herald was pressing him about that conversation. And the more he pressed him about it, the more Kyrie got defensive about it. It was just two friends having a conversation, total denial. Now, was he supposed to say, yeah, I was trying to get him to sign with Brooklyn because I'm out. Like, no, I don't expect him to say that.
Yeah.
But as Sherrod and I learn, and you learn, covering Kyrie is an experience. And if you come at him with the wrong tone, with the wrong word usage, he is going to get defensive. You've got to ask him certain. That's the one thing I learned about Kyrie.
Specific question.
You have to ask him certain. You can't lead him. You can't talk to him like you expect him to answer a certain way. You can't say, Kyrie, it rained today. Who says it rained? I saw water. Was that rain or was that mist? I didn't like you cannot assume that he is going to tell you something that even is the blatantly obvious. So I just go back to the conversation in Milwaukee where, Bullpit was pressing him on that conversation. And then it came up, well, why don't you tell the fans or, that it wasn't about you leaving Boston or free agency. It was about, and he was like, what? So I can, and he kind of, so I can, you guys can go to social media and because social media, he
deflected.
It's not this, it's the same situation. He'll get defensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if he had a better explanation, listen, I didn't see the movie. I literally just wanted people to get a different point of view because this is something I'm studying. I think people would have had respect for it. Now, not everybody would have liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably would have said, listen, I saw it. I did not know there were so many anti-Semitic references or phrases, in the movie and in scenes or whatever. I haven't seen it. It is available on social, on
Amazon Prime.
Yeah, right. Now we all know about it. And that was another thing.
I ain't gonna plug Amazon. I ain't paying this.
That's good.
That's what he said.
But that's the thing. He got caught up in Nick Friedell's usage of the word promotion, to your point, Gary, of he was particular about what he was pulling out of the question. And the reality is that he was, whether he admittedly wanted to do so or not, he was promoting it by posting it because, like you said, the 4.5 million followers that see it, they're clicking that link out of curiosity, out of spite, whatever the case may be, they're still clicking because they're curious. And I think that is where the conversation was lost of him not understanding that whether he agreed with what Nick was saying, he was asking a question that was legitimate because it was seen as a form of promotion.
The problem that tends to come up with when Kyrie gets into these little kerfuffles with us and media and just people in general is that he recognizes that he has a tremendous amount of power and influence and sway over folks, but he doesn't embrace the responsibility that comes with that power, that comes with that connectivity he has with fans. And in this particular instance, whether he intended to do this or not, and I don't think he intended to do it, but it does come off that way, he becomes another part of the narrative of individuals who are trying to normalize these type of anti-Semitic thoughts. And that's the scary part. It's one thing to deal with somebody who is intentionally trying to go there. It's scary to me when you're doing that without necessarily either recognizing you're doing it or you don't want to see what you're doing. And when someone points it out to you, rather than hear what they're trying to say, you're just gonna dig deeper into your own, wormhole and just stick to what you think is the truth and pick and choose what elements of what they're telling you is happening to latch onto. Like, as you pointed out, Kwani, the word promotion. He absolutely grabbed that and would not let it go. And I thought that was his way of deflecting from what really we're talking about, which is you putting a link out to a piece of work that has a strong anti-Semitic message and tone to it. And whether you believe that or not, that you are implicitly endorsing that by the simple fact that you're putting it out there to your 4.5 million followers. So whether you agree with everything or not, you don't give the audience a chance to understand that. Like, if there are elements in that you agree with, just speak on those things and just say, there's a lot of things they're going to talk about, but I'm going to just say right now, I link that because I agree with their point about this. and this, and this. The rest of that stuff, I'm not really clear on, but those three elements or those two things, those are things that I am absolutely on board with. That way, not only are you showing that you have actually taken time to learn about what you're spewing about, but you're also taking it to that next step, which is educating your audience. Kyrie doesn't do that. He throws stuff out there and it's just like, and I mean, like the press conference that he had the other day where he opens with saying that I went to Amazon Prime, I put in a term and I put in another term and this came up, there you have it. So to me, it's like, you didn't watch it? You didn't do any kind of research on it? I mean, to me, on the cookies on the bottom shelf level, you watch it. You watch the damn movie that you just, particularly when you have that type of platform. He's just very flawed, and we all are flawed, and I get that. But to have the type of platform that he has and to be as reckless about it and not taking on the responsibility that you should when you have a platform of that size, that's troublesome.
It kind of, not like that it's exact similarity because these are two completely different examples, but him not watching or reading it, again, we haven't confirmed, but it's kind of like when LeBron would walk around with books in his hand and then he was actually asked what he'd take away from that Malcolm X autobiography, and he didn't really have much to say because he hadn't fully read it. So a lot of times it feels as though, I mean, maybe they are similar in the sense that it's an optics thing. It's like if he mentally wants to promote this kind of content, whether or not they're actually consuming it, for them, it's about what are my optics, what is my brand, and how do I continue to build that brand? And clearly for Kyrie, it's definitely not on the path of what society is.
Then be transparent about that. I mean, be transparent that, look, I haven't read this book, but I hear it's XYZ 1, 2, 3, pretty good, pretty bad, whatever. And that, at least that way we know, okay, he didn't read this book, so he doesn't really know what it's about. So I'm going to put his recommendation in a certain category because it's coming from the perspective of someone who doesn't really know what the hell they're putting out there versus someone who's actually read it or has looked into it or just can give me some knowledge other than the fact that they saw this on their screen, they did a copy and paste, put it in a tweet, put it on IG, whatever, send it on its way.
Well, I know that our fans would rather us talk about the Boston Celtics. Before we do that, I have to talk about Indeed, and I'm sure that the Brooklyn Nets might be appreciative this week of our ad sponsor, Indeed, because no one has a business like yours, and with all its strengths and challenges, to succeed, you need a hiring partner that adapts to your needs. You need Indeed. Indeed is the platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites, searching for the right head coach or candidate for your job, with just the right skills, Indeed has the powerful tools to help you find the person that you need. And one of the most powerful tools actually is that instant match. Over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match the job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to US data. When you sponsor a post on Indeed, you're 3 times more likely to get a hire. So, I mean, why not sign up for something that just makes your job so much easier? So all you have to do right now, if you're looking to hire for your small business or your NBA team, is to start hiring with that $75 sponsored job credit. All you have to do is go to Indeed.com/A-list. The offer is good for a limited time. Again, you can claim that $75 credit now on Indeed.com/A-list. Need to hire, you need Indeed. So let's talk about the actual Boston Celtics. Sorry that we took you guys through this long journey through Brooklyn, up the East Coast, and now we're in Boston, where the Celtics are looking, a little good right now.
What was that?
Well, they doing their thing. I mean, it was a little rocky, at one point, but they're bouncing back right now. They have the most recent win was at home win over Washington. Jaylen Brown had 24. Jason Tatum had 23. What was your takeaway from? Let's start with those two. Who stood out to you the most? Points aside.
You got it, G.
No, go ahead. Of course, Ron.
All right. To me, the guy that stood out was Malcolm Brogdon.
Okay, let's skip him.
But the thing about Malcolm, 23 points, 23 minutes, that in itself is great. But more importantly, his ability to just set the tone defensively, showcased the ability to be an impact player, which they brought him in here to do. I thought that was one of his best, if not the best game he had at both ends of the floor. I thought he did a lot of good things defensively. And as a team, they did a lot of good things defensively, which for them, that has to be a major part of their success going forward.
I thought Brogdon did well. I thought
You're not say Luke Cornett.
Not even weighing.
I thought Jalen set the tone. I thought it was just a good all-around effort, a good defensive effort. Shutting Beal down in that game until not scoring until like 3 minutes left in the third quarter, keep him as a total non-factor. I wasn't crazy about some of the runs they gave up. I think when they got up 51-27 and it looked like it was going to be a really easy night, they started getting cute. And then, Washington cut it to 11 by halftime. And that's the kind of game that you're up 24 in the first half, make it 30 or 35, like put them really away and you can make an easy night. And it was somewhat of an easy night because Jalen and Jason only played like a minute 40 in the fourth quarter, but you could have made it a little bit easier by concentrating a little bit more. And those are the lapses that we saw last year, playing with leads, the pull-up threes and everybody trying to get each other their turn at the three ball. Like, just play the game through. So, but I thought Malcolm was tremendous in that game. I thought he kind of took pressure off Jason and Jalen scoring-wise. And as I said, there's a good – you got to beat teams like that. Like, those are the teams you need to focus on beating, taking care of business, breaking that 2-game losing streak.
And I want to go to the game right before that, the bench. So we've been talking about the bench since, honestly, the NBA Finals at this point. So scoring 48 points against Cleveland, even though it ended up being a loss, do you think that was a fluke of what the bench can do, or is that real? Is that what the Celtics bench is made of?
They got guys. Well, go ahead, Gary. You got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think as guys get more comfortable in their roles, and Brogdon and that Sam Hauser could be a factor. And, there was no Grant against Cleveland, remember? So that's a little bit scoring off the bench there. I think the bench is fine. I think that could they use another boost? I think they could, but we'll see how that goes. Obviously it looks like Cornette has kind of replaced Vonleh as that backup center role because he's got some considerably more minutes over the last couple of games than he did in the first couple of games where he was just kind of playing mop-up duty. So I look out for that factor. And, I think they're just trying to find themselves, find their role. Hauser's getting open, clean looks. I think focus on him. What's going to happen with Peyton Pritchard? Can he earn some more minutes? I just think there's some some things to still figure out with the bench. But I do think they're capable of scoring points. Hauser can hit the open three. Brogdon get to the basket. Grant Williams is capable of 15, 18 points on a given night. So I think that's what they need from their bench. They need a lift. I think it was interesting when Brogdon said in Chicago, like, they got smoked. Like, Chicago put in their bench. The Celtics took like a 19-point lead. And the Bulls were countered with like Derrick Jones Jr. and Gordon Dragic and Andre Drummond. And it was like the Celtics then got smoked and they blew the lead very quickly. Brogdon was bad. There was a lot of just really poor play on that. They didn't hold the lead. They didn't keep things up. And that's what the bench needs to do. Keep the level of play high. So I thought they did that on most part against Cleveland. Good job against Washington. The problem against Cleveland was just the defense was awful.
Yeah, I mean, when you give up 41 points to not one but two guys in the same game, hell yeah, your defense is awful. Especially if only one of those two is an all-star caliber player. And especially if one of those two next game out has 1 point? Something ridiculous like that Caris LeVert had. The bench is going to be fine. I think they're going to be fine because they have something that I don't think they've had in a while, and that's legitimate, bona fide, undeniable leadership. That's what Malcolm Brogdon gives them. He gives them a presence that they, I think, understand their roles and have embraced those roles. Hauser knows when he gets in the game, his job is to shoot, but he's got to do enough defensively so that that doesn't stand out in a bad way. You start going Grant Williams, he's your job to knock down open shots and be somewhat of a physical presence around the basket. You start going down a line of what guys are supposed to do, and it's clear that they have the talent to get significant contributions night in and night out from that bench. It's just a matter of, are those guys going to consistently make the most of their opportunities? Because they're going to get opportunities to play. Joe Mazzulla has been pretty clear about wanting to play, lots of different guys. But if you're not getting it done, he's got no choice but to have you sit next to him and the rest of the coaches. You don't want to be that dude. So I like where they're at, but I think that there's still a couple levels that they can get to with that second unit and be really, really better than they are right now.
You mentioned Brogdon. Would you rather see him start, or what do you think about him coming off the bench consistently? Which do you think is a better fit for the Celtics?
Second unit. I like him with the second group because they need some stability, as I mentioned earlier. They need a glue guy, and he's that guy. I mean, he is. He has a presence about him that speaks to his ability to be a leader of men. And that's what you need in that second unit.
It's that Barack Obama voice, I'm telling you.
For sure. I mean, he's got that going on. And bottom line is, he's talented too. I mean, we can talk about leadership all you want, but he can get buckets. He can make plays.
Experience, that all matters.
And he's a good player who understands and appreciates what he brings to the game and understands how to connect with his teammates. And he's done a good job as a leader for these guys.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I agree.
What else do we need to talk about? The Wizards were actually the Celtics' first opponent this season that were held to less than 100 points. Do you think the Celtics are back to being an elite defense? And is this the Defensive Player of the Year effect, Mr. Marcus Smart?
Go ahead, Gary.
No.
Trickle down defense.
No, they got Cleveland on Wednesday, then Chicago. The two teams that beat them, they got them coming up again this week. So let's see what happens there. I think they play good defense, but I don't think they're back. I think they got some work they have to do on schemes and techniques, but I think it was a good sign. But I think it's going to take 10, 15 games more for them to really play that lockdown defense. And obviously, whenever Robert Williams comes back, I think that will add to it and make it just, the cherry on top in terms of their defensive arsenal. But I'm not going to go off one game. I think they've got to be more consistent in that department, stick to their principles, not let things go when things get a little bit difficult as they did against Cleveland.
Yeah, there's definite signs of trending in the right direction defensively, but they still have a ways to go. And even when they continue to make progress, we're not going to really know how good they are until they get Robert Williams back. I think that his absence really, just makes everything a little bit more pronounced as far as problems. I talked to Al Horford after, the game with the Wizards, and we talked about just not having Rob. And, Al made it pretty clear that without Rob, we all have to do our jobs a lot better because Rob cleaned up a lot of the mistakes that we made. Yeah, they were a top-ranked defense, but they got arguably the top-ranked cleanup guy back there making sure that, when they get beat, it doesn't have a significant impact. And I think what we saw in those games that they lost, it became very apparent what not having Rob Williams looked like. There's certain games that we're going to see between now and his return where his absence is going to be very pronounced, that you're going to know this is why this guy got some, was an all NBA defender. This is why when these players talk about who's the team's best defender, the only person that is given any consideration to be better than him is Marcus Smart, who's the Defensive Player of the Year. So his absence is certainly a factor. But defensively, I like what I'm seeing with guys like Jaylen Brown, for example. I thought he had a really good game defensively the other night. And, even though Sam Hauser is not no lockdown defender, he's not going to get any all-NBA defensive votes. But when I'm watching him play, I'm not watching him get completely filleted and char-grilled defensively. He's not barbecue chicken out there. He does not become barbecue chicken defensively.
No barbecue chicken alert.
No barbecue chicken for Sam Hauser. And that's a great thing because when people talk about his play, you're focusing mostly on what he does well, which is making shots. You're not thinking about what he does defensively because he doesn't make the mistakes that I think some other guys are making defensively. He's a good positional defender. He's not out jumping anybody or anything like that, but you're not seeing guys easily blow by him. And when guys do beat him, he's smart enough to direct them to where the help's at. So Sam's been a solid defender.
Jaylen Brown, though, you mentioned him a little bit. Do you think his defensive game has improved?
So far, I thought the Washington game was really, really good. You start going through the numbers, guys shot like 35% against him in that game, and they were 7 for 20 combined, which is a lot of shots for one guy to be defending. But I thought Jaylen, as Gary pointed out earlier, I thought Jaylen did set the tone at both ends of the floor. I thought his defense was solid. It felt as though he did a better job of contesting shots. And it seemed that as a team, they did a better job at that. And defensively, that's a big part of being successful, the ability to make the degree of difficulty for your opponents as tough as possible. And I thought they did a much better job of that. And as Gary pointed out, Bradley Beal didn't score till late in the third quarter. I think his first basket, he scored with about 3 minutes to play, and he made his first basket with about 1:30, 40 to play in the third quarter. And to hold a guy that explosive offensively to like one bucket and basically, damn near 3/4 of play, that's impressive. And Jaylen certainly was one of the guys that had a hand in that.
Before we wrap up, around the league, but still in the Eastern Conference, the Brooklyn, I keep wanting to say New York things. Wow. The Milwaukee Bucks are the only team that's currently undefeated. They're 6-0 as of Tuesday. Do you think this is sustainable? How long do you think the Brooklyn...
You mean go 82-0? Is that what you're saying, Brooklyn?
Why do I keep saying Brooklyn? Yeah, Milwaukee. Can they go undefeated?
No. They're good. They're good. Look, they're going to be one of the last teams standing. There's no, and I do believe Milwaukee will be the best team going into the playoffs out of the East. I think they'll have the best record. I think they've got, one of the most unstoppable players who is basically a mid-range to long-range jump shot away of being the most unstoppable player, period. With his athleticism, his age, he's still a relatively young man. Just his basketball IQ just seems to keep growing and growing, and just pure athleticism. And the NBA has a lot of great athletes, but y'all go Heat.
Gary, what do you think? Brooklyn again, just
Milwaukee, I think they're fine. I don't think they played particularly well yet this season. They kind of held on to beat Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
The games I've seen them, they've had spurts. They don't look like this juggernaut yet, but they don't have Chris Middleton. They don't have Pat Connaughton. So I think they're going to be fine after that. So, I think they're the main contender in the East. Miami started out slow, 2-5. Philadelphia's just starting to get things together now, win a couple of games in a row, getting Doc off the hot seat a little bit, win at Washington, and just starting to get things together. So I think the East is obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with Brooklyn. But I think that at this point, it's Miami and Philadelphia. And then Cleveland, I think, is some team to watch out for. Everybody's like, there's a couple of years away, but this might be the year that they bite somebody and get to the second round or something like that. So I think Cleveland's definitely someone to watch out for too. So I think the competition's there, but I think Milwaukee's the best. But right now, I don't think they're playing particularly great either. But with Middleton back, I think right now they're the best.
But that's episode 100, guys. That's crazy. Put some sparklers in the... Gary is just the party pooper, not dancing, but it's okay. There we go. Wow, he does a really good impression of a noisemaker. I'm impressed.
Isn't that great?
Well, thank you to our listeners for getting us to 100 episodes. Again, happy birthday to Sherrod. We back next week. This is the